Venerable Ioannicius the Great, commemorated on November 4. Saint Ioannicius the Great was born in Bithynia in the year 752 in the village of Marikat. His parents were destitute and could not provide him even the basics of an education. From childhood he had to tend the family cattle, their sole wealth. Love for God and prayer completely dominated the soul of the child Ioannicius. Often, having shielded the herd with the sign of the cross, he went to a secluded place and spent the whole day praying. And neither thieves nor wild beasts came near his herd. By order of the Emperor Leo IV, 775–780, a multitude of officials went through the cities and towns to draft young men for military service. Young Ioannicius was also drafted into the imperial army. He earned the respect of his fellow soldiers for his good disposition. But he was also a brave soldier who struck fear in the hearts of his enemies. Saint Ioannicius served in the imperial army for 6 years. More than once he was rewarded by his commanders and the emperor. But military service weighed heavily on him. His soul thirsted for spiritual deeds and solitude. Saint Ioannicius, having renounced the world, longed to go at once into the wilderness. However, on the advice of an elder experienced in monastic life, he spent a further 2 years at the monastery. Here the saint became accustomed to monastic obedience, to monastic rules and practices. He studied reading and writing, and he learned 30 Psalms of David by heart. After this, commanded by God to go to a certain mountain, the monk withdrew into the wilderness. For 3 years he remained in deep solitude in the wilderness. And only once a month a shepherd brought him some bread and water. The ascetic spent day and night in prayer and psalmody. After each verse of singing the Psalms, Saint Ioannicius made a prayer, which the Orthodox Church keeps to this day in a somewhat altered form. The Father is my hope. The Son is my refuge, the Holy Spirit is my protection. By chance, he encountered some of his former companions from military service. The saint fled the wilderness and withdrew to Mount Cantoiria to hide himself from everyone. Only after 12 years of ascetic life did the hermit accept monastic tonsure. The saint spent 3 years in seclusion after being tonsured. Then he went to a place called Celadon to see the great ascetic Saint George, February 21. The ascetics spent 3 years together. During this time Saint Ioannicius learned the entire Psalter by heart. As he grew older, Saint Ioannicius settled in the Antidiev monastery and dwelt there in seclusion until his death. Saint Ioannicius spent 70 years in ascetic deeds and attained to a high degree of spiritual perfection. Through the mercy of God the saint acquired the gift of prophecy. As his disciple Pachomius has related, the elder also levitated above the ground when he prayed. Once, he crossed a river flooded to overflowing. The saint could make himself invisible for people and make others also hidden from sight. Once, Saint Ioannicius led Greek captives out of prison under the very eyes of the guards. Poison and fire, with which the envious wanted to destroy the saint, did him no harm, and predatory beasts did not touch him. He freed the island of Thassos from a multitude of snakes. Saint Ioannicius also saved a young nun who was preparing to leave the monastery to marry. He took upon himself the agonized maiden's suffering of passion, and by fasting and prayer, he overcame the seductive assault of the devil. Foreseeing his death, Saint Ioannicius fell asleep in the Lord on November 4, 846, at the age of 94.